Welcome back to the 90s podcast hosted by yours truly, Kevin Thompson, founder and CEO of 99 Capital Group. Thank you guys for joining us. As I always say, subscribe to the channel. As I always say, go and get my book, MLB to CFP, live on Apple and Amazon. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email us at info@99capitalgroup.com. Send us your questions, or you go to the website at www.99capitalgroup.com. Schedule your appointment. As you know, we're here to do what? Educate, empower, and engage. And today we're talking about something that means a lot to me. We're talking about the crisis in Major League Baseball at this time. Some people see it as a crisis. Some people see it as an opportunity. Right now, we're talking about the decline of the American black player in the MLB. I'm going to give you some statistics on why that is, what some of the reasonings are, and how we can change the tide of the exodus. We're talking about MLB. We're talking about black players. We're talking about the financial side behind it as well. Let's get it. So I hear you asking, Kevin, yours is a financial podcast. You own your own company. You played in the big leagues. Why are we talking about this right now? How is this interject or how do we integrate this into a financial topic? Well, all that's going to come to light because this is financially related in the grand scheme of things. So one thing I'll say is over the past few decades, we've witnessed a significant drop in the number of black players on MLB rosters. In 1995, approximately 19% of the MLB players were African-American. 19%. Fast forward to 2023, and that number has fallen to roughly 7%. This is a staggering decline, and it's vital to understand the factors behind it. So the first thing I'm going to say is many of you may not have noticed the investment Major League Baseball has made across foreign lands, whether it be in Dominica, whether it be in China, in Asia. There's multiple academies that the MLB is funding to get this type of talent and to basically increase the exposure of the game. For example, when I was playing winter ball in Dominica, there's academies across different regions. There's the Yankees have academies. There's new academies from all these different teams, the Brewers and things like that. They have academies in those regions, and they're fostering huge amounts of talent. So one thing I'll say is part one is the lack of domestic academies. One critical issue is the lack of domestic academies in the United States. While the MLB invests heavily in academies, like I mentioned, in Dominican Republic and Venezuela, providing extensive training playgrounds or training facilities and development opportunities for young players, they're lacking similar investments in the United States. Now, why is that? Well, I'm not really sure why that is, but the result is the American black youth have fewer opportunities to develop their skills and showcase their talents. For instance, the MLB Urban Youth Academy program, which aims to provide free and low-cost construction to underserved communities, is a step in the right direction. However, it pales in comparison to the comprehensive and well-funded programs abroad. Why this hits home for me is because I remember several years ago when I was playing with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I felt that one of the best players I've ever seen with my own two eyes was going to change the game. It was going to change the reflection, what the game actually represents, and be able to be, this person was going to be able to be used to foster a new generation of black talent. His name was Andrew McCutchen. Andrew McCutchen was probably far the most talented individual I've ever seen play or lace him up with my own two eyes. And I thought, this guy is going to be the next best thing. And he won an MVP and all of those things. But baseball didn't necessarily do a great job of promoting him in regards to putting his face in different areas. In my opinion, that could have brought a lot of black talent to the game. I thought they missed a great opportunity there. Another one was Ryan Howard, all the other guys. And it came apparent to me that I didn't feel like baseball was doing enough to foster the talent that it had if they wanted to embrace a new era and bring those numbers from 6% to 7% up back to the mid-teens and the low 20s as it was back in the 80s and 90s. The reason why I'm having this conversation today is because MLB weekend just passed, and I was a part of, I was invited to the Players Alliance by Curtis Granderson. They're doing a phenomenal job. Edwin Jackson, CC Sabathia, Curtis Granderson, Brandon Watson, Nick Logan. A lot of guys are a part of this program to bring in a new age, to change the dynamic of what's happening in baseball right now. We all know there's a host of factors that have caused the decline of blacks in baseball, whether it be the role of other sports, for example, other sports such as the NFL, the NBA. NFL and NBA have done a phenomenal job reaching out to lower represented communities, and of course, the ability to make money quickly in those sports has basically allowed a lot of the people that are in lower socioeconomic situations to flock towards those careers as well. But be that as it may, baseball in the early 80s and 90s, and I'm going to tell you this, during the 1980s and early 1990s, baseball was deeply embedded in the African-American communities. Many urban areas had strong youth baseball programs, often supported by social organizations and community leaders. These programs provided accessible pathways for youth and young black athletes to develop their skills and pursue baseball careers. Also, the role models and representation, there were a numerous host of individuals. I can't tell you, back in the days, you had the St. Louis Cardinals, Ozzie Smith, Willie McGee, Vince Coleman. I mean, you could go up and down the lineup and see these guys like, wow, this is awesome. Of course, we had Hank Aaron, Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, Ken Griffey Jr., Barry Bonds, Frank Thomas. All these people were out there in front of us. Andre Dawson, the Hawk, all these guys, we were looking up to these guys. We were looking at these guys like, man, this is crazy. Dave Henderson's. I mean, they were everywhere. They were everywhere. There were a number of people to look up for. They inspired many young athletes to pursue baseball. Their visibility and their success demonstrated that a career in baseball was achievable and prestigious. Also, back in the early 80s and 90s, public schools and community centers played a crucial role in fostering baseball talent. During the 80s and 90s, many schools had robust sports programs, including baseball, team sports, providing youth and black athletes regular opportunities to play and develop their skills. Now, there's been a whole host of economic and social factors. For example, like I mentioned, baseball was more accessible in terms of costs back in the day versus sports like football and basketball. The expenses associated with with playing baseball, such as equipment, travel teams, and training camps, was not the same. It didn't cost several thousands of dollars. You didn't have to waste several weekends just to go to these games hundreds of miles away. It was so much slower, and it made it easier for families of diverse economic backgrounds to support their children in that sport. Now, one thing I'll say is this. Major League Baseball has done a very good job out in their outreach programs, right? It made a concerted efforts to have scouts and develop black talent back in the 80s and 90s. Teams invested lots of money in scouting networks that actively sought out talented players from urban areas, ensuring that promising black athletes had opportunities to be noticed and nurtured. However, as we moved to the late 90s and beyond, several things occurred. The rise of basketball and football, like I mentioned previously, as more prominent and financially lucrative sports attracted many young black athletes. Additionally, the increasing cost of participating in youth baseball combined with a lack of investment in urban programs contributed to the decline in black representation in the MLB. I mentioned to you previously that there's been a lack of domestic academies. As you know, like I mentioned, there's been academies across the globe because baseball is trying to get its outreach to these other foreign countries, which is fine. But one thing we don't talk about is the political side of things, right? There's been a huge policy, and this is not political in any degree where I'm pro-Republican or pro-Democrat or anything like that. But I truly believe that in 1994, under the crime bill signed in by President Clinton, This legislation led to a substantial increase in incarceration rates of African-American men, disrupting families and communities across the country. They've already come out and apologized for that recently. But again, baseball often requires substantial family support, both in terms of time and financial resources. The absence of a two-parent household, particularly in economically disadvantaged communities, can severely limit a child's ability to participate in sports like baseball. This isn't just anecdotal. It's a reality that many American-born Black players face. You have to have a two-parent household because that's weekends of your time, that's travel, that's support financially, mentally. It's all a part of that if you want this child to grow up and be successful in this game. Like I mentioned before, politics and socioeconomic factors have undeniably played a role in this decline. The combination of systemic barriers, including lack of academies and the impact of legislation like the 1994 crime bill, creates a challenging environment for aspiring Black players in America. Moreover, the financial burden of playing baseball, from equipment, travel teams, is a significant barrier. Now I see that it's getting a little bit better because they have these groups that are coming into these cities that are putting on these events where everybody can come out and perform in front of scouts and coaches and things like that. It's creating another avenue for these kids to play. I remember when I was playing, they had this thing called Team One where we could all go there and play. I didn't want to do that because there was a cost to it, of course. My parents could have paid for it. I just didn't want my parents to have to pay anything for me to go out and try to achieve my dreams. I wanted myself and my ability alone to speak for it, and that's what I did. But again, like I said before, the decline of the American Black players in the MLB is multifaceted. It requires a concerted effort to address. It's not just about talent. It's about providing equal opportunities, investing in domestic academies, addressing the socioeconomic and political barriers that have hindered the participation of Black youth in baseball. We need to foster environments where all children, regardless of their background, have a chance to pursue their dreams. By understanding and addressing these issues, we can work towards a more inclusive and representative future in the game of baseball. So let's talk about why this is so important to me. I remember watching Griffey. I remember watching some of these talented, the Wizard, Ozzie Smith, and I said, man, I want to do that, right? I want to do that. But now you don't have that representation. What you have is a LeBron James where everybody sees on a daily basis. You have 70% African-American exposure inside or 80% African-American exposure inside of the NBA. 70-80% in the NFL. You have this exposure that allows Black individuals to see themselves in a positive light. That same positive light can be put into the corporate aspect as well. If more Black kids and individuals saw themselves on the corporate side of things on Wall Street, there may be an opportunity there where people start saying, hey, I see myself as that. Like President Obama, I see myself as that. The more we can see these things, the more we see Black surgeons, Black attorneys, Black physicians, Black doctors, Black what have you. It allows us to envision ourselves as wanting to do those things. It's all about representation. So today's podcast was about representation. It's about why these numbers are declining so precipitously, why the outreach has not been there in such a way. And the reason why I'm having this conversation is because, again, this last weekend, I was a part of the MLB Players Alliance, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. You saw in the most recent draft, the numbers are starting to tick up a little bit because a lot of African-American kids were drafted in the first round. That is a change. That is a significant step. We are headed in the right direction, but we have a lot of room to go. Now, my last thing I'm going to say is the economics of it. This may be one of those things where we talk about like, oh, you're hitting a nerve here, but it's the economics of baseball. It's the economics of anything in regards to business. A foreign-born player in Dominican Republic, you can go and put them all into an academy and you have your pick of the litter, right? You have your pick of the litter. Here in the United States, it's not necessarily the same. You have to go through a draft. So let's just say hypothetically, you have that player here in the United States, a African-American Black individual in the United States, and they're pretty good. Well, you have to pay more money for the American Black individual than you have to pay for the people overseas. The reason why I'm saying that is because if you can have your pick of say 10, 15, or 20 individuals in a certain region versus having maybe one or two here and have to pay up for the individuals in the United States. Well, you're going to spread that money around the people over in foreign lands because your chances of success are vastly increased because that one individual, that one investment you make here is going to cost you X amount of more dollars than it would overseas. So the economics is saying that, hey, if you want to talk about from a labor perspective, I can get cheaper labor here with a better opportunity of having one of those basically work out versus having expensive labor or more of expense labor here. And then ultimately it may not be panning out. So from an economic standpoint, that's how that baseball works in regards to the reasonings why they're outreach. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason that they're outreaching. No. I'm saying that from an economics perspective, I get it. I get the reason why you would want to kind of spread your finances across foreign lands because again, it gives you more of an opportunity to have more of the individuals make it to the big leagues and your investment paying off. So today we talked about why the numbers in the Black community in regards to the MLB have come down. We mentioned one being that there's been a lack of domestic academies across the United States in the urban areas. We've seen that there's a lack of investment that has been in those regions for over the last several decades. Now that may be changing, but ultimately that has led to some of the factors in regards to the lower amounts of percentages of American Blacks, the role of representation. Again, there's a small number of Blacks in baseball. And then if people don't see themselves as being successful in said industry, there's going to be a lack of people wanting to join that industry. I've also talked about the politics and socioeconomic factors. The two-parent household is key. We know that in the Black community, that has been a huge issue regarding that, not just on the Black community, but a lot of communities in general, but more in the Black community, because like I mentioned before, whether it be policy, whether it be bills, whether it be legislative issues, there have been negative impacts of certain legislative passages that have had substantial impacts in Black communities that have ripped Black men out of their homes, which ultimately is needed for a two-parent household is needed to get to that next level. I just from my standpoint, many of the individuals that I've come across, including myself, have had two-parent households because the two-parent household is what's needed to basically make this work. So in conclusion, baseball is doing a good thing, but especially with the Players Alliance. Thank you guys for having me out. Just like I said, understanding the historical context of Black representation helps us recognize the shifts that have occurred and the importance of investing in community-based programs, providing accessible pathways for all young athletes. Thank you guys for tuning into the 9 Innings podcast. I wanted to have this conversation because I think it's a very, very valuable topic. Connect with us on social media, MLB to CFP on X, MLB to CFP on Instagram, MLB to CFP on Facebook, 9I Capital Group on Facebook as well. Thank you guys for joining me. As you know, we're here to do what? Educate, empower, and engage. And I think this is a very, very pivotal topic. I hope it brought you some clarity, some value. Until next time, let's continue to celebrate and support diversity in sports. Stay humble, stay safe, my friends. I'll see you again soon.